Back with you once again as your guest minister while Reverend Victoria Weinstein is taking some time off. And welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greater Lynn. I don't see any children, but if any show up, be aware that childcare is not available this morning, but the Rainbow Room is open with art supplies and toys if any children want to be taken there during the service. In the wake of the tragic events in Charlottesville yesterday, I feel compelled to say a few words as your guest minister about today's worship service. If I were your regular minister, I might have changed the theme of this morning's worship to address the events more directly. But then again, I might not have. Today is part 2 of my 3-part series about deepening our reverence for this beautiful earth. And we should not be deterred by the ugliness and hatred on display in Virginia and in the rhetoric and the actions of those who claim to be the leadership of our nation. Hatred and bigotry have no place in this world, and I have faith it will be always met and ultimately defeated by love. I'm so very proud that many Unitarian Universalist clergy were in Charlottesville this weekend, including our UUA president, to show up and demonstrate the resolve of our inclusive faith. The latest news I heard indicated at least 35 people were injured and 3 people were killed. Please hold all of them and their loved ones in your hearts this morning, and join me in a moment of silence before we begin our worship service. Amen. After the service this morning, I'll be around for a bit if there's anyone who feels they would like to talk more and process the events from yesterday. We will now begin our regular worship. Our call to celebration this morning is the poem "Nothing Gold Can Stay" by Robert Frost. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leafs a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down today, nothing gold can stay. I invite you to join in our opening hymn, number 12, in your gray hymnal, O Life That Maketh All Things New, number 12.
Thank you.
Ruth forward to light our chalice.
May unity and peace abide within us. May wholeness and joy touch our hearts. May kindness and compassion fill our universe, and reverence fill our days. May we see the light that shines in all.
Please rise in body or spirit, and so may our unison affirmation is printed in your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth its sacrament, and service its prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God. Please be seated. Our reading this morning is an excerpt from the book The Sixth Extinction, An Unnatural History by Elizabeth Kolbert. Extinction may be the first scientific idea that kids today have to grapple with. 1-year-olds are given toy dinosaurs to play with, and 2-year-olds understand, in a vague sort of way at least, that these small plastic creatures represent very large animals. If they're quick learners, or alternatively slow toilet trainers, children still in diapers can explain that there were once lots of kinds of dinosaurs and that they died off long ago. All of which is to say that extinction strikes us as an obvious idea. It isn't. Aristotle wrote a 10-book history of animals without ever considering the possibility that animals actually had a history. Pliny's natural history includes descriptions of animals that are real and descriptions of animals that are fabulous, but no descriptions of animals that are extinct. The idea did not crop up during the Middle Ages or during the Renaissance, when the word fossil was used to refer to anything dug up from the ground, hence the term fossil fuels. In the Enlightenment, the prevailing view was that every species was a link in a great, unbreakable chain of being. Now is the time when we celebrate the joys and sorrows of our community.
Hi, my name's Eileen, and I have a joy that Linda was in the hospital for a week. She finally got out Friday, and I also have a request. If people could just send cards or, say hello or stop in and visit. She's really, really depressed. She is suffering from congestive heart failure, and so that's been a pretty big blow. But she's home at least, and we're watching her very carefully. Thank you.
Hi. I just had the great joy of getting to go home for a week and see my family in the Midwest, and it was wonderful. But I also spent time with a dear friend of mine who is having suicidal thoughts and having a very hard time right now, to say the most obvious. And I'm just having a bit of a struggle dealing with the fact that I'm so far from her and I can't really support her. And I've been FaceTiming and trying to be there for her, but it's very hard to see this happening and not be able to be there. So just, that's my concern. If you could put her in your hearts, I'd appreciate it.
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. I thank God for being here this morning, and my joy and sorrows for being here this morning. Monday, I don't know what happened. I must have drinking something and doing my laundry, and I got awful sick at the laundromat. And so I just thank God that I'm here this morning and seeing everybody, and just we pray for one another.
Well, let us hold all of these joys and concerns in our hearts, as well as those that remain unspoken. Amen. Our meditation this morning, in the written meditation, comes from David H. Eaton and called A Common Destiny. After the spoken meditation, there'll be a time of silent reflection, and then we will once again sing hymn number 123 in your great hymnal, Spirit of Life, to come out of the silent time. All living substance, all substance of energy and being and purpose are united and share the same destiny. All people, those we love and those we know not of, are united and share the same destiny. Birth to death, this unity we share with the sun, the earth, our brothers and sisters, strangers, flowers of the field, snowflakes, volcanoes and moonbeams. Birth, life, death, unknown, known, unknown. Our destiny from unknown to unknown. I pray that we will know the awe and not fall into the pit of intellectual arrogance in attempting to explain it away. The mystery can be our substance. May we have the faith to accept this wonderful mystery and build upon its everlasting truth. centuries ago, in the Western world at least, we lived in a world that seemed to make more sense. It was no utopia, of course. There was plenty of violence and suffering, then as now, but a fairly universal understanding of the cosmos prevailed. Underfoot was the unchanging terra firma of the earth, the center of the universe, the stage upon which the human drama unfolds. Hell was somewhere below, and God, with his saints and ranks of angels, was watching us from on high, somewhere up there above the vault of the sky. The sun rose and set predictably. The seasons cycled through the year, and we human beings, created in the image of God, dutifully played our assigned roles in God's plan for salvation. We knew we had once lived in the paradise of the Garden of Eden, but because of our rebellious nature, we had been cast out, and the world had fallen into a state of sin that only God could redeem at the end of days. And even though we might quibble with, about differences in the details and the plan described in the Holy Scriptures, we could all agree on the basic trajectory of the story, from creation to the fall to the final tribulation, from Genesis to Revelation in the Christian Scripture. It has long been debated exactly when the final tribulation or end times would come, but we had a clear understanding of the beginning. In fact, in 1650, using biblical references about who begat whom, Irish Archbishop James Ussher even computed the actual date the world was created with incredible precision. October 22nd, 4004 BCE, around 6 p.m. Of course, we now know he was a little off by just a few billion years. Yes, the world made sense, and we understood our part in the great unfolding story. Even when someone found a rock with what appeared to be a fish or flower frozen into its surface, or an odd bone would turn up that seemed to belong to no known animal, it could be explained. These must be remnants of plants and animals from before the time of Noah's flood, so-called antediluvians, unusual critters that apparently missed the boat for whatever reason. Or perhaps these were dragon bones, since we knew many heroic tales about dragons, and such beasts were even mentioned in the Bible. But as Frost reminds us in our opening words today, nothing gold can stay. Our worldview began to unravel. During the Renaissance, Copernicus and Galileo relocated the earth from its lofty position at the center of the universe. And despite the zealous efforts of church authorities, there was no turning back. One monkey wrench after another was thrown into the clockworks of our cosmic story. And as science began to find natural causes for many of the phenomena that were once considered the sole domain of the Almighty, the earth turned out to be incredibly old. And we eventually realized that countless species had lived and died long before the beginnings of human history. By the time Darwin came along with his theory of evolution, it was not looking good for the old cosmological story at all. But old beliefs can be stubborn, and even when faced with clear contradictory evidence, many people simply chose to double down on the old story, and still do. It is simply too painful to acknowledge the possibility that even a part of the story could be in error. For if that is the case, what about the whole system of beliefs upon which it rests? Would God and indeed our whole plan for salvation come tumbling down like a house of cards? Perhaps we could find some middle way, a reasonable explanation for the contradictory evidence that would allow us to hold on to the unraveling story, even if it stretches the limits of credulity. Maybe we can find enough metaphorical duct tape and baling twine to patch the old story together. But what do we do with a Tyrannosaurus rex, or an Allosaurus, or the 99% of all other species in history who once lived but are now extinct? If in God's plan, what is the meaning and purpose of dinosaurs? How do we make sense of a plan that includes the creation of so many forms of life for apparently no other reason but to become extinct? This problem has challenged theologians and other people of faith for centuries. And the proposed solutions range from the ridiculous to the sophisticated. On the ridiculous end of the spectrum, a contemporary example can be seen at the Creation Museum in Petersburg, Kentucky, which promotes creationism, or what some people prefer to call creation science. There, in well-crafted exhibits that rival any museum of natural science, you will be informed that the earth really is only 6,000 years old, that the book of Genesis is scientifically accurate, and that dinosaurs once lived peacefully alongside their human friends. Now, one might expect depictions of children playing with their dinosaur buddies in a cartoon or in a theme park that caters to the imaginations of 8-year-olds. But for the folks who founded the Creation Museum, the mission is of vital importance. They're concerned that humanity is being led astray by the so-called scientists and their godless story of creation. We might dismiss creationism as an outdated idea shared by a shrinking number of fundamentalist Christians, but lots of our fellow Americans would not consider the theories promoted by the Creation Museum to be ridiculous at all. According to a 2012 Gallup poll, 46% of Americans believe in some form of creationism, and another 32% believe in some sort of theistic evolution, that is to say, evolution assisted by divine intervention. Despite the overwhelming evidence presented by the biological sciences over the last 158 years, only 15% of Americans in the survey believed that life on Earth evolved through organic natural processes. Only 15%. I have to admit that as someone who feels a tremendous spiritual connection to the Earth, and who experiences a profound awe and wonder in the evolutionary journey of the universe, it is disheartening that so many of my neighbors believe that human beings are something apart from nature, that so many people cannot appreciate the beauty of our existence as a unique species in an intrinsic web of relationships with all other forms of life. It is also disheartening that so many theologians who have accepted the essential facts of evolutionary biology have failed to grasp the full implications of what this means for humanity. Too often, the focus of even modern theology is on humankind and our importance. And the dinosaurs and other non-human species are dismissed as either irrelevant or at least considered to have only value in their relative utility to human beings. From this perspective, the evolution of species may be true, but evolution is just a means to an end, and that end remains God's plan for salvation. Such a worldview retains a special status of human beings And I suggest it is the prevailing opinion in today's world, even if most people really don't stop to think about it, even among the non-religious. The material world and its creatures are seen as resources to be consumed and manipulated for the use of humankind with little thought or consideration about the moral implications. There are theologians who wrestle with these issues more honestly. And one recent idea that is gaining popularity among many Christian theologians is known as open theism. In fact, it was an article on open theism that I read in the Christian Century, written by Bethany Solerator, that gave me the inspiration and the title for this sermon. The essential points of open theism are as follows. God always acts out of perfect love and wisdom in order to bring about the good. But because all creatures have inherent free will, the path is often long and difficult. God allows this freedom and continues to be our companion on the journey. But since we share in the decision-making process, even God does not know the outcome of the story, only the countless possibilities. Each creature is loved and good in its own place and time. So God loved the dinosaurs equally and valued their unique natures despite their ultimate demise. Their extinction was simply a result of natural processes that happen according to natural laws, and God suffered as they suffered. Their suffering has meaning in the flourishing of mammals that followed and the emergence of humankind. Now it is our turn to be the dominant species, and God values us just the same. Our destiny is left to us and natural laws to determine, but God desires only the best for us. Open theism is an interesting idea, and I can see how this theology could appeal to many people, perhaps even some of you. But I admit it doesn't work for me personally. For more traditional Christians, I believe the ideas of open theism could be helpful in developing a greener form of Christianity that truly values the rest of creation. To do unto others in such a theology extends to all those whom God loves, including the non-human community. I am more comfortable at the naturalistic end of this theological spectrum. It is a place where many theologians are reluctant to tread because one possible implication is that evolution is a cosmic game of chance. Who wins and who loses in the game of life is largely a matter of luck. If this is the case, human beings are here because we had the right combination of good fortune when a meteor and other factors took out the dinosaurs, and a series of evolutionary adaptations that align well with our today's world: warm blood, body hair, big brains, and so on. We are only special in hindsight due to our incredibly good luck. And as science continues to expand our understanding of the cosmos, it is increasingly difficult to hold on to the idea that we are special at all. There are roughly 2 million known species of animals, plants, fungi, and microbes living on Earth. And about 20,000 new species are being discovered every year. Yet the biologist Edward O. Wilson estimates there are probably at least 6 million species in total, and it could be as many as 100 million. As I mentioned earlier, this represents only about 1% of all the species that ever lived on Earth. The other 99% are now extinct. And if you really start to think about it, what exactly is a human being anyway? Each one of us is really more than a single organism. We are more like a colony of organisms. There are about 100,000 species of bacteria that live on or in all parts of our body, including the gut flora that makes our digestion of food possible. When you add in the other mites and other small critters that call our bodies home, what we think of as ourself begins to look more and more like Noah's Ark. And just to make things worse, we are learning that the Earth is only one planet among potentially billions of worlds that might support life. It is starting to seem rather arrogant to have imagined the human story on Earth as the be-all and end-all of creation. Now, you might find all of this very unsettling. If we are not a special creature created in the image of God, is there any purpose to life at all? Are we just one of millions of species locked in competition for survival, destined to go the way of the dinosaurs one day? Are we just kidding ourselves about culture, civilization, and even religion? Have we gained all of this knowledge only to find ourselves once again cast out of the Garden of Eden and forced to make sense of an indifferent world? Perhaps the human story is indeed just a lucky break in the great cosmic journey. Perhaps there is no ultimate destiny for humanity, but eventual extinction. We know that even the Earth will not last forever. If we avoid getting hit by an asteroid or other calamity, scientists estimate that in about 1.5 billion years, our sun, the source of energy of all that sustains life on our planet, will start to run out of hydrogen fuel and begin a period of rapid cooling and expansion, leading to an inevitable death. As our sun expands, it will quickly grow in size beyond the orbits of the inner planets, swallowing up Mercury, Venus, and the Earth. Sic transit gloria mundi, the saying goes, thus passes the glory of the earth. But it is important to remember that 1.5 billion years is a very long time from the perspective of evolution. Our earliest humanoid ancestors only emerged around 5 million years ago, and we have certainly come a long way since then. And here's something else to consider. Among all of Earth's creatures, we alone have the intellect and self-reflective capacity to understand the great story unfolding around us. Our intelligence is what lets us ask the big cosmic questions to begin with. We are inseparably bound in a great web of life that nourishes and sustains us. But it is the creative output of generations and generations of human beings that has given the earth the capacity to know herself and to know the universe in all its glory. Our human spirit is capable of incredible imagination, and we can experience awe and wonder. We can glimpse the sacred mystery at the heart of creation. If other animals and plants have purpose and meaning too, it is not just for their objective utilitarian value, but for what they can teach us as companions on the journey. Reflecting on the sacred story of life on earth as a communion of subjects rather than a collection of objects can give us an important fresh perspective. When we see life as a web of relationships, it suggests that nature is not indifferent to our suffering at all. Whole systems suffer when a species suffers or becomes extinct. Even those species now long extinct can help us gain a new understanding of our place in nature and an appreciation for the gift of life. It is a lesson in humility. Back in February, my wife and daughter and I went to Italy. And as we toured around the ruins of the ancient Forum site, I remember something I read many years ago In ancient Rome, when a general would return victorious to the city after a great conquest, the Senate would often confer what is known as a triumph. Soldiers and their captives and spoils of war would be paraded through the city as the crowds roared their approval. And the general would arrive in a chariot in splendid form, a godlike, conquering hero for all to see. But lest the general become too full of himself, there would be a slave riding behind him in the chariot, whose job it was to hold a wreath of laurel over his head and to occasionally whisper in the general's ear, "Memento mori," which means, "Remember, you must die," or more poetically, "Remember, thou art mortal." The reason I'm telling you this story is this. Perhaps this is the purpose of dinosaurs for us today. Once these great beasts ruled the earth, they were the pinnacle of evolution in a time when our mammalian ancestors were small, hardly noticeable creatures that scurried around to avoid being eaten and lived in holes in the ground. Who could have imagined the world their descendants have created? When we look at the bones of dinosaurs in our museums, perhaps they are reminding us that we too are mortal. And at a time when human beings are causing the demise of so many other species, the sixth great extinction event in Earth's history, they remind us of the fragility and specialness of life and bear witness to our arrogance. They give us a perspective on deep history and ecology, illuminating ancient connectedness to the earth and our unfolding journey of evolution. They tell part of a life story that we continue to write. One day our descendants might leave the earth and spread out across the universe into other star systems, long before the earth dies. It is a hopeful thought, but it would be complicated by the need to bring all of the other species and resources upon which we depend. We must essentially take a piece of the earth with us. For now, at least, let us listen to what the dinosaurs can tell us. Let us learn to take the longer view of life and truly see ourselves within the wondrous web of all existence. As Carl Sagan famously said, we are all made of star stuff. So in one sense, we are all as old as the universe, almost 14 billion years old. I read an article just a few weeks ago that suggests that half of the atoms in our solar system, including those that we are made of, were forged in supernova explosions in distant galaxies, possibly millions of light years from Earth. The cosmic dust was blown across vast distances over billions of years before it coalesced with more local matter into our solar system. If you're looking for intergalactic travelers, turns out we are already here. We are brothers to the stars, sisters to the moon and the planets, and cousins to the dinosaurs, the great forest, and the trillions of microbes that surround us. It is a glorious dance of life, creativity, and relationships. We are of this earth and part of this earth, not merely passengers along for a ride. Let us rejoice in the splendor of this knowledge. An offering to support the mission of this church will now be given and gratefully received. Last week I spoke about the individual relationship with nature. And this week I broadened the idea of the ecological self to talk more about our species and society and culture. And next week I'll be talking more about how our faith might reflect a deeper sense of this connection to nature. So let me leave you with a couple of quotes to ponder until then that share a similar theme of awe and wonder. The first quote comes from the cosmologist Brian Swimme. The deep truth about matter is that over the course of 4 billion years, molten rocks transformed themselves into monarch butterflies, blue herons, and the exalted music of Mozart. The second comes from the biologist Ursula Goodenough. We arrived on this earth but a moment ago and found it to be perfect for us in every way. And then we came to understand that it is perfect because we arose from it and are a part of it. Hosanna, not in the highest, but right here, right now, this. I invite you to join in singing our closing hymn, number 163 in your great hymnal, For the Earth Forever Turning, number 163. Now let us take the light of hope from this place into the world, doing justice, loving kindness, and walking humbly with the sacred mystery that sustains us. Go in peace, return in love. Amen.
course, yeah.